Welcome everyone to Daf Yomi 1 week at a time. Today this is our fourth lesson, and today we are going to be reviewing Daf 25 through Daf 31. Daf 31 is actually tomorrow's Daf, but in order to keep us on schedule, we'll do tomorrow's Daf as well. So as I mentioned in the summary, we are talking about different types of acquisition. So we're going to begin with the slave that we mentioned last week, and we're going to finish that up and talk about other things that can be acquired and how we acquire them. Again, it's interesting to think about, I think in modern sensitivities, the way we acquire something, right? The way we buy something is I give you money, you give me the object. That is not the case in the time of the Mishna and the Gemara. There needs to be some sort of action that's done, right? They would not like, all these electronic, kind of Zelle and things like that, or Venmo, or buying something online with a click. You're not, taking an object, you're not grabbing it, you're not lifting it up. So it's interesting how the world has changed. But we're going to go back to what the world was like beforehand, which is there needs to be some sort of action taken in order to create the sale. So let's finish off with the servants or the slave that we talked about last week. Daf 25. If you remember last week, we mentioned that if the master injures the slave goes free. And it depends what type of injury it is. It needs to be something severe. It has to be something that deals with either a tooth or an eye or another limb. So now the Gemara asks on Daf 25, what if the master makes the slave sterile? Meaning there was some sort of injury. The question is, do we see it as an exposed blemish, an exposed injury or not? And the Gemara explains that we mentioned the tips of the limbs are counted as areas that if they are injured, the slave goes free. There are 24 of these limbs. And if any of them are cut or severed, the slave goes free. And this is included in this list is also if the slave became sterile. So then that is included. It seems that there's a machloket, there's a difference of opinion if it includes the tongue as well. Is that the tip of a limb or not? And from here, the Gemara talks about, since we're talking about the tongue and lips, is the tongue seen as an exposed part of the body or as an, kind of a hidden or internal part of the body? One can understand the difference of opinion, right? I can see the tongue, but it's inside my mouth. So the Gemara brings different practical differences when we're talking about impurity. The tongue is seen as something exposed. But when we're talking about the mikvah, going into the ritual water, it's seen as something concealed, meaning when one goes into the ritual water and the water has to touch every part of your body, you can leave your mouth closed. The water does not have to go into your mouth. But it's interesting that the tongue is seen as both exposed and concealed. So since we're talking about going to the mikvah, the Gemara talks about a woman who goes to the mikvah, and when she comes out, she finds that there was something in her teeth. Now, again, the mouth, if we just said the mouth can be closed, maybe it doesn't matter that there was something in her teeth. Again, the idea is that there can't be anything blocking the water from touching the exposed part of your body, right? If you have a Band-Aid on, you can't go into the mikveh, you have to take it off. So what about something in her teeth? So Rebbe made her go in again. It seems that again, inside of her mouth seems to be an exposed part, right? Meaning there can't be anything there. The Gemara says no. A concept that the Gemara teaches us is something needs to be fit for purification, meaning you can't have anything, let's say, in between your teeth or blocking, but the water doesn't have to touch that area. Again, it has to be fit for purity, but it doesn't have to be exposed to the water. And that's how we understand this idea of the inside of the mouth being on one hand exposed and on the other hand concealed. Okay, the next Mishnah on Daf 25 is now going to talk about acquiring animals, right? How do you buy an animal? Now, there are two types of animals in the Mishnah. One is what's called large animals. That would be cattle, cows, oxen, big animals. Small animals are generally sheep and goats. Those are the animals that we're dealing with, again, for commerce in the time of the Mishnah. So the Mishnah tells us that large animals are acquired by handing over the reins, right? So if you have a big cow, you give the reins over to the other person. That's called in Hebrew misira. Misira means to hand over. So you hand over the reins. That shows that you are now the owner. Small animals are acquired by lifting up the animal, literally picking it up. This is called hagbaha, and that means picking up the animal. We're assuming it's a goat, a sheep, something small that you could physically pick it up. Another way that you can acquire it is what's called mishicha, which is pulling the animal. So you can pull the animal or lift up the animal. If it's a large animal, again, you're not going to lift it up, though the Gemara is going to talk about that in a minute. But if you get control of the animal, meaning the reins, then you've bought the animal. Okay, so the Gemara tells us that pulling the animal, mishicha, also works for large animals, or maybe both animals are only acquired with lifting up. Now, of course, the Gemara is going to say, how could that be? You can't pick up a cow, so much so that the Gemara actually says, how do you buy an elephant? Which is fascinating that the Gemara would even mention buying an elephant, but obviously you cannot lift up an elephant. So the Gemara gives a few suggestions on how to buy an elephant. This is good in case you wanted to know. One is what's called kinyan chalipin or chalifin. We've seen this before. This is where one picks up a small item, but by picking this item up, I'm acquiring something else. Right, and I think someone mentioned, but I think maybe it was Lynn talked about picking up her pen when she was selling her chametz. That is kinyan chalipin, where we're not dealing with the object that I'm trying to buy. I lift up a different object and I acquire that object. So that could work for the elephant. Or I can rent the space that the elephant is standing on. If you remember, we talked about it and we're going to talk about it again, that if I own the land, then I acquire the things that are on it. We're going to talk more about this in a minute. Or I can put my own utensils under the feet of the elephant. And if the elephant is standing on my whatever, pillows, blankets, whatever it is, so then I acquired the elephant. And the last opinion on Daf 26 is you can have the elephant stand on a bundle of vines. The idea is that as he goes onto these vines, you are lifting up the elephant, right? You're causing him to go up, and therefore it's as if I've lifted up the elephant and he becomes mine. Okay, so if you want to go buy an elephant, now you know how to do it. Okay, the Mishnah on Daf 26. How do we buy land? So land, karka, right? It's called in Aramaic, in the Mishna, and in Hebrew as well. Karka is land is bought with money, with a document, right? A contract, or with chazaka. If you remember, chazaka means doing a proprietary act, and we'll see what those things are. If you want to buy movable objects, right? A cup, a bowl, a knife, anything that I can pick up and move. In the Mishnah, it's called metaltalin because they can be moved. You buy them with mishicha, right? You pull them towards you. When you buy land, you can acquire movable objects at the same time, right? So if there is a wheelbarrow on the field, when I buy the field, I buy the wheelbarrow, right? That could be part of our agreement. If there's a legal dispute involving land and movable objects, a person can make the other person swear not only on the movable objects, but even on the land. We're going to see that I cannot make you swear about land. I can only make you swear about movable objects. But if they are, if there's a dispute about both of those things, so then I can combine them in order to make you take an oath on both of those things. And the Gemara is going to explain this in detail. The Gemara says, we can use money or a document. You don't need to use both. This is learned from a verse. If there is a place where they always use documents, so then you have to use documents, meaning if in your town the way you buy a field is by signing a contract, so then you have to sign a contract. Or you can stipulate that you only want to use money, even in a place where they use documents. Again, we have this concept of a contract, what's called sefer mikneh. It's a contract of sale. The question is that for a sale? Can it be used as a gift? Or maybe it's only for a gift, but maybe for a sale, you need money and the document. Or no, document works even without money, right? I, Tamara, will sell you this land, and I write it to you in the document. You don't have to give me any money yet, and the sale goes through. What does it mean that that you have to do what's called a chazaka? You have to do some sort of action. This is based on a verse. It means that you either live on the property, right? If you own the property, you can live on it. If you don't own the property, then if you live on it, the person who owns it is going to say, I don't know what you're doing here, but you're on my land, right? So living on it shows that you own the property, or you can work the land, right? If it's a field, you can work the field. Generally, we work our own fields, right? Not somebody else's. Okay, what does it mean, mishicha, to pull something? It means, right, again, I take something from your hand, from your domain, and I pull it into mine. Right, and the question is, according to the Torah, only money is enough to acquire it, meaning, like we nowadays, I give you $10, I now own, right, whatever it is I was buying. According to the sages, I need to do some sort of action in order to show that it is mine. Giving money is not enough of an acquisitional act. Okay, now we're going to talk about another type of acquisition. This is called kinyan. Kinyan means to acquire. So kinyan agav. Agav means kind of, I don't know how to define it. I'm going to buy one thing and I acquire something else within that sale. So let's see how it works, right? I can buy land and I get movable objects with the land, right? It comes together with the sale of the property. Now the Gemara asks, does that movable object need to be on the land, right? Let's say we use the case of the wheelbarrow on the property. What if I want to buy the wheelbarrow and the property, but the wheelbarrow isn't on the property? Can I buy both of those things in one acquisition? So there are different opinions. One says it has to actually be on the land. Others say it does not have to be on the land. You can acquire it with the property. And then the Gemara gives stories of people who had a lot of different movable objects that they wanted to give away as gifts. So they bought land in another place, and then they gave away the land with those movable objects, right? So you get a field and you get a cup. You get a field and you get a table, right? It comes together, and it seems that it was not on the land at the time of the sale. Okay, then there's another story of Rabbanit Gabriel who was on a ship and he forgot to take maaser, right, the tithe from the produce in his house. So he rented the land that the maaser was on to the sages that were with him on the ship, and that proves that the movable objects do need to be on the land. Or the Gemara says, no, he didn't want them to have to trouble themselves when they got off the boat, and therefore we can't prove it from here. The Gemara says, we're now on Daf 27, that you can write a document for the sale, even if the money wasn't paid yet. As we mentioned, the document can work even without the transfer of funds yet. If it's connected to a chazaka, to an act, to acquire the land, then when you do that action, you acquire, right, the document, and therefore the actual you don't need the movable objects to physically be on the land. Okay, the Gemara says you don't have to use the word agav, right, kind of with the sale when I make the sale. Or maybe you do need to use the word kinyan, right? This is a sale, and I am doing this agav, right? I'm buying the land, and with it, I'm acquiring these movable objects. What if a person sells land but wants to give a gift of the movable object, right? Meaning we said that it works if it's both sales. But what if one was a sale and the other is a gift? Can you use this mechanism, right? Can you use kinyan agav? So the Gemara says, yes. We learn it from the story of the ship, right? The tithe, the maaser, was given as a gift. The land was sold or rented. So you see that it does work. How about, can you sell the land to one person and give the movable objects to someone else? Right? Again, can I do it in two different ways? The Gemara says from the ship story, it seems that does work. If he only paid for the land and some of the movable objects, you only acquire what you pay for, not all of the movable objects, right? So if I sell you a field, and with that I sell you a dining room table and 6 chairs, if you only pay for the field and the table, and you didn't pay for the chairs, you don't get the chairs, right? Meaning you only get what you pay for. And we see here that money is, now the Gemara is going to say, we've mentioned different mechanisms. each of them has a certain power, right? So money is more powerful because it can transfer sanctity onto money, right? We can redeem something onto money. Therefore, that's a strength, as you would say. Um, a document is stronger because it's the only thing that a woman can use to get divorced, right? She can't pay to get divorced. So a document has a certain strength. Both of them are stronger because you can use either money or a document to buy a slave. But chazaka, again, that's the proprietary act, is stronger because you can buy 10 fields in 10 different places with only one act of chazaka. Again, as we mentioned, only if you paid for it. Okay, if someone handed over the reins, right, let's say one rein that's tied to 10 different animals, so then you acquire all 10 of the animals. Again, if you were told, right, these are all for you, even if you're only holding on to one, if they're all connected, so then you bought all of them. Okay, now we're going to talk about the concept. In Hebrew, it's called Gilgul Shvu'ah. A Shvu'ah is an oath. Literally, it means a rolling oath. What does that mean? When I'm allowed to make you take an oath, right? We saw this in the Darim, that was vows. Here we're talking about an oath, swearing. But if I can make you take an oath, I can add other things to that oath that I couldn't have made you swear by itself. But since I already am making you swear, I can add other things in there. Where do we see this? We actually learned it in Masachet Sotah. If you remember, in Masachet Sotah, she needs to swear that she did not have an affair. Now, if you remember, he can say, now, I also want you to swear that you didn't have an affair before we were married, meaning when we were only betrothed. I want you to swear that you were faithful. Now, he really can't do that on its own, but because he's already making her swear, he can add to that oath. And therefore, we see that this concept of this rolling or all-inclusive oath is actually from the Torah. So Lynn is saying we're adding on, and therefore it is valid. Daf 28 tells us that therefore with monetary cases, you can also do this type of an oath, even when we have a doubt, right? When we're not sure, I can make you take an oath, right? Again, the sota is about doubt, right? We're not sure what happens. So too with a monetary issue, there is also doubt. How far can you push this oath? Can you make him swear that? Like, can you take it very far to an extreme? Like, can you make him swear that he isn't a slave? So the Gemara says no. You can't make him swear that he's not a non-Jewish slave. You can make him swear that he is not a Jewish slave because that is a monetary issue. It's about value. And therefore, you could even take it to that extreme. Okay, the next Mishnah is going to talk about Kinyan Chalifin. Kinyan Chalifin, as we said, again, that's where you pick up one thing in order to buy something else, right? You exchange an item. This is actually learned from Ruth, so that's why I didn't bring up Zohar's question about Ruth, because we were going to talk about it right now. However, it's a little bit different. Zohar asked about Boaz, so now he wasn't really selling Naomi, right? Meaning he was selling the land, but he wasn't selling her. He wasn't selling the land either. He was just saying who is going to acquire it. However, in that scene, so you were close, in that scene, it says that Ruth removes and hands over the shoe. Now, I'm not talking about the chalitza process, but doing that, handing over the shoe, creates a kinyan, and it shows that there is some sort of transaction here. Once the person takes responsibility for something, so then the other person acquires the other thing. So now the Gemara explains it. It seems to be discussing a coin, right? Some sort of money. And the Gemara says, no, it's not money. It's anything of value, right? You pick up the thing of value, and then the other person acquires the other thing. You could use money, but that would be the value of the object. It's not that you're buying it with that money. Okay, the next Mishna tells us that it's important to understand that the temple, the Beit HaMikdash, needed to buy and sell things, right? So it needed to buy any supplies that it needed, whether it's building supplies or things that it needed to function. So in any type of business deal, the Mishnah tells us that the temple, the Beit HaMikdash, can acquire, right, using money, whereas a regular person needs to acquire with an action, right? Either chazaka or mishicha, pulling. But we're going to see how the temple gets special treatment that the temple can use, right? The temple treasury can use money to buy an object, and it doesn't have to do more than that. Saying that it also works the other way. Saying that you're going to give something to the temple is like you gave it, meaning just saying that you're going to give something requires you to give it. You can't be like, oh, no, never mind, I didn't mean it, right? Meaning you didn't write it down, you didn't, swear that you were going to do it, but just saying it creates an obligation. So the Gemara explains that again, the temple, if they pay for an animal, it's now owned by the temple, even if the animal is somewhere else, even if it's in another place. Again, don't forget, there's so many things that need to be bought in the Beit HaMikdash, so we want to make it as easy as possible to create these transactions. Right? If a person says, this animal is for an olah, right, for a sacrifice, or this house is sanctified, so then it's valid. And the Beit HaMikdash acquires it, even if it's, again, as we said, even if it's far away. But a regular person, right, that doesn't work, right? If I say, I'm giving this to you, so it's not yours till you take it, right, or till I give it to you. Just saying it is not enough. Okay, Daf 29. Okay, now let's say we're in a transaction with the temple. So now we're going to talk about who gets the upper hand, right? The Beit HaMikdash, the temple, is always going to get the upper hand, right? So till you pay the temple, you have to pay the current value if it's a higher price, meaning in the words of the Gemara, it says the yad, the hand or the power of the Beit HaMikdash is Elyona. It's always higher, meaning the temple always gets the higher value, whether it's when you originally made the deal or it's the current value. Whichever one is higher goes to the temple, to the Beit HaMikdash. If you pay for an object and then you retract the transaction before right before you pulled the object. So then it does work. You could renege on that deal. However, the sages look on it very poorly, and they say, right, that you should be cursed. That's really not a nice thing to do. There's something called Nisha Para, right? It's a curse that says that, right, the person who, starts doing a deal and then takes it back is really not an honest person. Yes, Zohar says an upper hand. Yad ha'elyona, you have the upper hand. Thank you. Okay, the next Mishnah on Daf 29. This is a very, very famous Mishnah, talking about the responsibilities that parents and children have to each other. And it talks about obligations for women. So whenever I teach women's obligations for different commandments, this is the Mishnah that I teach. 1 second. Okay, here is the Mishnah. The Mishnah is a little ambiguous, so I'm going to read the Mishnah in the way that the Gemara explains it, because it's just easier that way. The Mishnah says, the mitzvot, the commandments that a parent needs to do for their children. So the father is obligated to do it for his son, and the mother is exempt, right? So when we're talking about parents, the father has the obligation and not the mother. We'll see what mitzvot, what commandments we're talking about. All mitzvot that a child has to do for their parents, both the son and the daughter are obligated, and they're obligated to both their mother and their father. So everybody is in this scenario. The Mishnah continues that time-bound positive mitzvot men are obligated to do, and women are exempt, meaning any mitzvah that has to do with a certain time, and when I mean time, I also mean day, right? So shofar, lulav, right? All of those mitzvot are connected to the day. Women are actually exempt. Don't worry, women have taken it upon themselves to do these mitzvot, and therefore we should all listen to the shofar on Rosh Hashanah. But it is a time-bound mitzvah. Non-time-bound positive mitzvot, both men and women are obligated. All negative commandments, whether they're time-bound or not, right? Don't eat chametz, don't kill, don't steal. All of those things, men and women are obligated, except for 3 mitzvot, and those are shaving your head, right? A man is not allowed to shave his peyot, the corner of his head. A woman is allowed to shave her head. A man is not allowed to shave his beard. A woman, if she has a beard, she can shave it. And a priest, a kohen, a male kohen, is not allowed to become impure from a dead body. But if a girl, right, is a bat kohen, meaning her father is a kohen, she can become impure from a dead body. Okay, let's go to the Gemara. So the Gemara says that both sons and daughters need to honor and fear their parents. But now let's flip it around. A father needs to do certain things for his son. What are these things? He needs to do brit milah, right, circumcision. He needs to do what's called Pidgeon haben, right, redeeming the firstborn. He needs to teach his son Torah. He needs to marry off his son, right? Find him a wife, which some explain this is the reason that this Mishnah is here in Masachet Kiddushin, because we're talking about marrying off a wife. marrying off the son to a wife, and you need to teach your son a trade. Right? They need to have a way to earn a living. Some say he also has an obligation to teach his son how to swim, right? Because this is right, life and death. Okay, the Gemara is going to go through each one of these things and explain how we know that that is the case. So we learn Brit Milah, circumcision, from Abraham, right? It's an obligation. If the father doesn't do it, so then the court needs to do it, meaning the community needs to do it. The Gemara tells us that the woman, the mother, is not obligated to do it, which is interesting because if you remember the story of Moshe and Tzipora, Tzipora actually does do Brit Milah on her son in order to save someone's life. It's not clear if it's Moshe or her son. It is interesting that is not mentioned here. I think it's that she could do the Brit Milah, but she was not obligated to do the Brit Milah. So that's just interesting. Okay, Pidgeon Haben. Pidgeon Haben is about redeeming the firstborn. You take 5 silver coins, you give it to the priest, to the Kohen, and he gives you your son back. So the Pidgeon, if the father can't do it or doesn't do it, so then the son needs to do it for himself, obviously when he gets older, not when he's 30 days old. That would be a little complicated. The mother does not need to do it because she is not commanded herself to be redeemed. Therefore, she doesn't need to be redeemed. We're going to see this again, that if it's not a commandment for you, so then you don't have to do it for others. We said the son needs to redeem himself, and he can do it himself if, let's say, he wasn't redeemed and now he has a firstborn son, so then he redeems himself first and then he redeems his son, like the mask on the plane, right? You do yourself first, then you do your son. The other opinion is no, you do the son first and then you do yours. The Gemara says, let's say you only have enough money to do one Pidyon Haben. Who do? The son or the father? So the Gemara says that you do the father because it's his body and it's his money. So he takes precedence over the son. If he only has money to either do Pidyon Haben or go to Jerusalem for the festival, what's called Aliyah L'Regel. So then he redeems his son, that takes precedence. Or maybe you go to Jerusalem first because that mitzvah is time bound, right? You only have 7 days of Sukkot to go to Jerusalem for Sukkot. Once it's finished, you can't, you missed the opportunity. Whereas Pidyon Haben can be done minimum on day 30, but you can also do it when the child is 2 and 10 and 50. So maybe you do the Aliyah L'Regel first. The Gemara teaches us that Pidyon Haben is done on the mother's first child, not the father's. So if the father, right, if that man has 5 wives, they do 5 Pidyon Habens if each one is the first child that she gave birth to. If the mother had a miscarriage beforehand, or if the baby was C-section, so then they do not do Pidyon Haben. Also, if the father is a Kohen or a Levi, you also don't do Pidyon Haben. So those are just some facts about Pidyon Haben. Okay, we mentioned having to teach Torah. It says, we say in Shema, V'limadetem otam et bnechem. You need to teach your sons. And if the father doesn't teach his son, so then the son needs to teach himself. The mother isn't obligated to teach her son because she isn't commanded to learn meaning the father doesn't have to teach his daughters. Therefore, when the daughter grows up and becomes a mother, she doesn't have to teach, meaning presumably she can't teach because she hasn't learned anything. I'll discuss this in 1 minute. Let me just finish. It says that you need to teach your sons b'neichem and not b'notechem, your daughters. This is a little complicated because in the Torah, we know that b'neichem can also mean children, right? Even though it's in the masculine, when things are in the masculine, it could also include masculine and feminine. The Gemara here seems to say masculine, not feminine. Therefore, the father has an obligation to teach his son, but not his daughter. And from here, this is the source that women shouldn't learn Torah. As I look at all the wonderful women that are on this group, it is important to understand that that is obviously not the case nowadays. We'll learn it a little bit more. We actually learned it in Masechet Sotah that there were even opinions in these days, meaning in the time of the Mishna and the Gemara, that you should teach your daughter Torah, that knowledge is power and it's very important. And definitely in modern times, even from the Rambam and on, scholars, sages have said that women do need to learn. There is a difference of opinion what they should be learning. Should they just be learning Torah? Should they be learning the laws, halakha? Should they be learning Gemara? This has been a conversation for many, many years. Yes, as Zohar says, not obligated, but not forbidden. Exactly. All of these things, just because you're not obligated to do them, doesn't mean you can't do them. However, in modern times, I think there is already an obligation to teach your daughters. They need to learn. If they're going to universities and they're learning chemistry and physics and literature, they should also be learning Torah, Mishna, Gemara. Obviously, I believe very strongly about this, but it is important to know that this is the source. Okay, let's keep going. I'm happy to hear your thoughts on this at the end. Let's say you only have enough money for one person to learn. Who learns, the father or the son? So one opinion is the father takes precedence over the son. If the son is very smart, so then the son takes precedence. And then there's a story of a father sending his son, and the son wasn't learning, so then the father went and he ends up killing a demon. It's a very exciting story. Let's continue. Let's say you you have to learn Torah, and then you should get married, says the Gemara. If you can't focus on your Torah because you're so distracted, then you should get married first, and then you can learn Torah. And here the Gemara says that you should get married, that a man should get married by age 20. Some say even younger. Daf 30 tells us a father should, here talks about, the parental relationship, that the father should guide his son ethically. Here it's like in a strong way, between the ages of 16 and 22. Before 16 is a little too early. They're still rebelling. After 22, they're already set in their ways. So it seems that 16 to 22 is a good time, or maybe 18 to 24. So, you can think about that. Okay, maybe these obligations are, again, we talked about learning. Maybe it's only about Torah, or maybe it's more Mishna, Gemara, as we mentioned, other things that you can learn. The Gemara tells us that anyone who teaches Torah to their son, it's as if they taught their grandson and future generations. From here, we learn that a grandfather can also have an obligation to teach his grandson, right? So if you teach your grandson, it's like you received Torah from Sinai. The Torah talks about, since we're talking about learning Torah, the Gemara says you should divide your life into three. A third of your life learn Torah, a third Mishna, a third Gemara. Or, right, since none of us know how long we're going to live, maybe you divide your week into thirds, and therefore your week, From here, since we're talking about the Torah, the Gemara discusses where is the middle of the Torah, a certain letter. It's in Vayikra. There's like the middle of the Torah in terms of letters, in terms of number of verses, in terms of number of words. And since we're talking about the words of the Torah, the Gemara says that the words of the Torah should be in your mind and in your mouth constantly. It should be clear. And that the Torah is like the medicine of life, right? It protects you against the evil inclination, the Yetzer Hara. We said that the father has to marry off his son, based again on a verse, and you do give things to your daughter so that she can also be married off. So here we do have son and daughter. We said you have to teach a vocation, you have to teach him how to swim, and those are to make sure that they are independent. Now we're going to talk about the mitzvah of honoring your mother and father, honoring your parents, kibud av va'em. This is compared to honoring God, right? And it's interesting to put those two together, right? Similar words are used. Kaved, right, meaning like kavod, to give honor. So too, the words of fearing. You need to fear your parents, maybe be in awe of them or fear. So too, you need to fear God. You're not allowed to curse your parents. You're not allowed to curse God. And here, very famously, the Gemara says on Daf 30, why are we connecting these things together, meaning the parents and God? Because all three are partners in creating a person, right? Mother, father, and God create the child. And when you honor your parents, it's as if you are honoring God, right? Some say it teaches you how to honor God. When a child honors, the Gemara tells us that the nature of a child is to honor their mother more than the father. Therefore, when God wrote about honor, he puts the father first, right? Kabed et avicha ve'et imecha, because that's not the natural thing. When you talk about fear, you're naturally more afraid of your father. Therefore, the pasuk says, Ish imo ve'aviv tira'u. When we're talking about fear, you need to fear your mother, says the Torah, right? Even though she's the nice one, you need to fear her as well. We're now on Daf 31. If you you will cause pain to your parents, so then God says it's a good thing that I wasn't around, that I wasn't there to see it. You do, let's say, let's say both your parents ask you for a cup of water at the same time. What do, right? Who do you honor first? The Gemara says you honor your father before your mother, because your mother also has an obligation to honor her husband. Therefore, you do the father before the mother. God, right, again, wants us to honor him and our parents, both of those. And here on Daf 31, we have a very, very famous story of honoring our parents. It is the story of Dama ben Netina. He is not Jewish, a child. Again, I'm not sure how old he was, but his father went to sleep, and under the pillow was the key to the safe. And the sages came to their house to buy a very precious stone for the breastplate of the Kohen Gadol. And they said, we want to buy the stone. And the son said, listen, my father's sleeping. I can't wake him up. And they said, we'll give you a lot of money. And he said, it doesn't matter how much money you're going to give me. I'm not waking up my father. And the Gemara explains that in the reward for not waking up his father, for honoring his father, was that the next year in their cattle was born a para aduma, the red heifer, which is very rare, and then they sold it for the exact amount that they were going to buy the stone for. And the Gemara says, you see, if non-Jews can do such a beautiful mitzvah, right? So much more so should we do this. From here, again, another very famous line that I'll say it in Hebrew and then I'll explain. Gadol ha-mitzuveh ve'oseh mishe'eno mitzuveh ve'oseh. What does that mean? A person who's commanded to do something gets a greater reward than a person who wasn't commanded to do it and voluntarily does it. We would think it would be the opposite, right? If I volunteer to do something, shouldn't I get a better reward? The Gemara says no, because when you feel obligated to do it, it makes it harder to do, right? If I say, go clean your room, it's the last thing you want to do, right? And therefore, if you do it, you get an extra, you get a bigger reward. Here, the Gemara talks about different stories of honoring or not embarrassing your parents, also about attitude, right? Even if you can't give your parents a very fancy meal, if you serve it with humility, with honor, then that is the most important thing. Also talks about a son who ran and opened the door for his father, even though he was a grown man, and very important. What happens if your parents want to serve you and you want to serve your parents? So the Gemara says you can accept it from your mother, but you shouldn't accept it from your father. Rabbi Tarfon, here are like beautiful stories about sons and mothers. The Rabbi Tarfon would let his mother, right? His mother had to get up on her bed. He would bend down and have her step on his back. And this is a great rabbi in order to show honor to his mother. Rabbi Yossi would stand up for his mother. And here really it shows the beauty of honoring our parents. And the last thing it says on for Daf 31 is that you shouldn't, part of honoring your parents is that you shouldn't use you shouldn't call them by their names or refer to them by their names. Rather you say, right, avi mori, right, my father, my teacher, and that shows great honor. So with that, we are finishing today's class, and I really want to really wish you a Shana Tova, that everyone should have a wonderful new year, and really we should continue our learning into the new year. We should be able to have the merit to do all of these mitzvot that we just talked about, and really just wishing everyone a wonderful day, Shabbat, and Shana Tova. And next week will be regular class on Wednesday. I think I'll stop the recording, and then if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to hear any questions.